So we're back in our Bible series. This is going to be a little bit different this morning. What I'm going to try to do is recap the last 3 weeks. And what we've covered is some pretty wild ground. But what I would like to do today would be just try to sew these themes together in an overall picture of ultimately that the Bible has for us to understand a supernatural view of both our history and our life here on planet Earth. And it's wilder than we can imagine, or at least that we've been led to believe in recent times. So I don't know how much everyone has grasped from at least last week, but the reason I'm so passionate about this subject is our culture is moving ever closer towards some kind of unveiling of supernatural beings. Whether we understand that or not, you can look at films and television that are saturated with human beings or other beings with superhuman powers. And nothing more obvious than when you watch children's programs. It's all about magic. It's all about spells. It's all about superpowers. And I believe we're being groomed culturally for what is coming. And if the church doesn't grasp what is already said about the supernatural aspect of our history and the Bible, the library known as the Bible, then we're going to be speechless when these things come upon us. We're not going to have, the church isn't going to have a collective answer to explain what's going on. But Solomon said that what was before will be again. And I believe his phrase there was far more prophetic than even he might have imagined. So, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to try to just show you a theme. Remember, in this series, we're just looking at broad brushstrokes over the top of this library that we've collected together known as the Bible. And we're going to see a theme that runs throughout that ends with the greatest love story that this planet has ever known. But we are going to start with just an audio clip of someone that the Lord has led me to in the last few months, and I'm so grateful because I can really hide behind this man. He is a PhD Hebrew scholar, but he holds the supernatural view of the Bible, and I'm so glad that the Lord has led me to his work that just underlines what I believe is the way to interpret a lot of these very difficult scriptures. So play that one.
We all have watershed moments in life, critical turning points where, from that moment on, nothing will ever be the same. One such moment in my own life, the catalyst behind this book, came on a Sunday morning in church while I was in graduate school. I was chatting with a friend who, like me, was working on a PhD in Hebrew studies, killing a few minutes before the service started. I don't remember much of the conversation, though I'm sure it was something about Old Testament theology. But I'll never forget how it ended. My friend handed me his Hebrew Bible, open to Psalm 82. He said simply, "Here, read that. Look at it closely." The verse hit me like a bolt of lightning. God, Elohim, stands in the divine assembly. He administers judgment in the midst of the gods. Elohim. I've indicated the Hebrew wording that caught my eye and put my heart in my throat. The word Elohim occurs twice in this short verse. Other than the covenant name, Yahweh, it's the most common word in the Old Testament for God. And the first use of the word in this verse worked fine. But since I knew my Hebrew grammar, I immediately saw that the second instance needed to be translated as plural. There it was, plain as day. The God of the Old Testament was part of an assembly, a pantheon of other gods. Needless to say, I didn't hear a word of the sermon. My mind was reeling. How was it possible that I'd never seen that before? I'd read through the Bible 7 or 8 times. I'd been to seminary. I'd studied Hebrew. I'd taught for 5 years at a Bible college. What did this do to my theology? I always thought, and I taught my students, that any other gods referenced in the Bible were just idols. As easy and comfortable as that explanation was, it didn't make sense here. The God of Israel isn't part of a group of idols. But I couldn't picture him running around with other real gods either. This was the Bible, not Greek mythology. But there it was in black and white. The text had me by the throat, and I couldn't shake free. I immediately set to work trying to find answers. I soon discovered that the ground I was exploring was a place where evangelicals had feared to tread. The explanations I found from evangelical scholars were disturbingly weak, mostly maintaining that the gods, Elohim, in the verse were just men, Jewish elders, or that the verse was about the Trinity. I knew neither of those could be correct. Psalm 82 states that the gods were being condemned as corrupt in their administration of the nations of the earth. The Bible nowhere teaches that God appointed a council of Jewish elders to rule over foreign nations, and God certainly wouldn't be railing against the rest of the Trinity, Jesus and the Spirit, for being corrupt. Frankly, the answers just weren't honest with the straightforward words in the text of Psalm 82.
Okay, it's probably a lot to take in, but you can take in the fact that here is a scholar who'd been to seminary, who'd studied Hebrew, who stumbled across a passage that was so profound that it ultimately changed completely the way he viewed the Bible. And you can see his work. That was taken from a clip from his book, The Unseen Realm, by Dr. Michael S. Heiser. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to start in the beginning. I'm going to try to give you just a narrative through the story so far. So Job 38, 5-7, God is asking Job, he's saying to him, who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it, speaking of the planet? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. The first picture we see is God in the assembly of gods, small g, created gods. This is his council. This is what he uses to govern from heaven. And they were there before creation of the world, witnessing the creation itself. The serpent Nakash in the garden, by the possession of the adversary, the enemy, tempted Eve to sin, who also in turn tempted Adam and came under the judgment of God. The punishment to mankind was declared by God, but the curse on the Nakash, the serpent, is what we focused on 2 weeks ago. The enmity described in Genesis 3:15, I will put enmity, that means odds, I will put you against each other between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. That's the first ever prophecy in the Bible, talking of a battle between the seed of the enemy and the seed of the woman. Satan hears the prophecy about his head being crushed. So what does he do? He goes about immediately to stop the seed of the woman, the one that would be coming, that would crush his head. And the first thing he does is to inspire Cain to kill Abel. That's the first thing he does. Then, when Seth is born to replace Abel, he goes and starts to produce his own seed. And that seed is the hybrid between fallen angels and human women, producing what we would describe as giants. But the term is called Nephilim. Genesis 6:4 states the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, the angels, came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. These were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. This ungodly union produced these super beings. And this is clearly recorded in Jude 6 and 7. It says, the angels who did not keep their proper domain, that's where they came from the heavens, left their abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains of darkness for the judgment of the great day. They were captured and placed in a place called Tartarus to be possibly released before the judgment comes. 2 Peter 2:4 confirms this. For God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into Tartarus, hell, and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment. So they had committed this heinous act of blending species, angels and human beings. The Bible refers to these as the legends of old. Greek mythology, Roman mythology, the Babylonians all speak of these great beings that did amazing things, that built the monoliths that we have no answer to, that pepper this planet from one end to the other. Let's see video number 1, Joshua. And that's just a glimpse of what we've recorded down through history. And don't forget that this bloodline has been bred out. So back in the day, in the beginning, they would have been probably even bigger than that. But we have found with some in the 1500s that have been recorded that were 36 feet in height. True supernatural giants. So during that time, we're talking about the pre-Diluvian era of before the flood. These fallen angels, according to the book of Joshua, also taught mankind to mix species together, to create hybrids between one group of animals with another, and with humans and animals too. And the bloodlines were getting so corrupted that God decided that the only way that he was going to protect that seed of the woman was to start everything again and wipe everything out. And he chose Noah, first of all, And it says that Noah was perfect. The word is tamim. It means of pure blood stock. The same term that we use when describing animals for sacrifice. It wasn't that he was sinless. It was that his bloodline hadn't been corrupted at that time. So he chose him and his family. He selected animals to come on board the ark, and God wiped the slate clean. And it is likely that the spirits of the giants are ones that Jesus encountered later on with the demons that were looking for other habitation, other host bodies to inhabit afterward. But we also know that there were giants again after the flood. But what's interesting here, so God wipes out mankind. He takes the sons of Noah, Ham, Japheth, and Shem, and those 70 sons, those descendants that became the nations of the earth, God designated to other fallen angels, sons of God. And we see that in Deuteronomy 32:8, and we looked at it in more detail last time, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance. That means he allocated physical parcels of land to these descendants of Noah. He fixed the borders of the people according to the number of the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim. So that's why we have in the Old Testament other nations worshipping and being led by other gods. These were part of God's counsel in the beginning that fell away. He gave those nations under them to rule, but for himself he chose the tribe of Judah as his inheritance. Deuteronomy 32:9 says, "But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage." So God now takes this seed of the woman through Noah, now focusing it more through the line of Jacob, the sons of Jacob, the whole tribe, and starts to work with his bloodline. This is the chosen seed of the woman, but the enemy is still watching because he wants to stamp that out. So what does he do? He overhears the promise to Abraham in Genesis 12:5. God says to Abraham, he says, take Sarah your wife, Lot your brother's son, your nephew, and all your possessions, and go to the land of Canaan. So he goes. He's obedient. He goes to the land of Canaan. But the enemy already goes ahead of him. He knows where the seed of the woman is going to be. And he seeks again to infiltrate the peoples of those nations and produce these hybrids again, the Nephilim. He starts to pollute the DNA. And that's why God was so strict. He said to them, when you go into the promised land, do not do as the others do in this land. Do not mix with them. Why did he say that? Because they were already being corrupted by these gods that had been given to them to rule over them. In Genesis 14, we know that the giants were still there, because in Genesis 14:5, it says, in the 14th year of Chedorlaomer, the kings who were with him came and defeated, this is the famous Battle of the Kings, the Rephaim, that was a race of giants, in Ashtaroth, the Zuzim, another race of giants, in Ham, and the Emim in Shava Kirithaim. There were more races of giants. And Abraham, despite the picture that we have of this frail old man, this guy was a warrior. He pursued them. Look at 14:15. It says, Abraham heard that his kinsman Lot had been taken. He led forth his trained men born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hopar, north of Damascus. He was a giant slayer. And so impressed was Melchizedek, the king of Salem, that Melchizedek, also a believer in Yahweh, blesses Abraham. And immediately after that, Abraham gets a vision about his own offspring, the seed of the woman. Ultimately, Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob has the 12 sons. The sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. They go, first, the one to go is Joseph. He was sold into slavery. He was taken down to Egypt, down to that place, that wicked place of Egypt, governed by fallen angels. Moses, the tribe come after Joseph. They're reunited. They spend 400 years there. But then the king of Egypt doesn't recognize Joseph at that time and become harsh with the people of Egypt. And ultimately, the enemy tries to stamp out that seed again by killing the firstborn. Remember, the Hebrew boys tries to eliminate that seed. Moses is raised up by God to deliver his people in spectacular fashion, and we read what was going on with the magicians. Do you think that was just made up? No, this would actually happen, that they managed to turn the Nile into blood themselves and do all these amazing things. They had supernatural abilities because they worshipped a fallen angel that had supernatural powers to be able to mimic those miracles that God had done through Moses. Eventually, they're taken out and into the promised land. After a whole generation is wiped out, he leads them into the wilderness, and there's Moses at this point then getting ready to go into the promised land, sends the 12 spies. 2 of them come back with a good report, 10 of them don't. And what do they say? Why were they so terrified? Because in Numbers 13:28 it says, however, this was their report, however, the people that dwell there in the land are strong, and their cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Anak. They were infamous. Even in Egypt, they would have known who the sons of Anak were. They were vicious giants. It said that they were so strong that they devoured the inhabitants of the land. Great in stature, it says. Numbers 13:32, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw are men of great stature. There we saw the giants. But through God's help, Joshua manages to rout the Nephilim from that land, and they almost take everything, except through disobedience when they didn't destroy all the hybrids that were running around at the time and the rest of them. But they subdued the land, they started to get settled there, but they came across the remnants of giants and also these animal hybrids that were in the land. Joshua, play video 2. So meanwhile, the fallen angels, instead of ruling justly over the nations that God had allocated to them, they corrupted themselves and demanded that they be worshipped as gods. And in Psalm 82, it reads, God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? And for this wickedness that they had done, they would be judged to die like men. Look at this, Psalm 82, 6 to 7. I said, you are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men you shall die and fall like any prince. In the most ironic twist, the very object of jealousy, that's mankind being made in God's image, that the sons of God witnessed, they themselves as judgment would have their immortality removed from them, and they would die ultimately like men. But we are going to be raised back again to be sons of God through the work of Jesus, the Son of God. But listen, the only begotten Son of God. See, there's a difference. Every time the Bible refers to these sons of God, it never personifies any of them. The only one that ever gets a mention more than is a title of the adversary, the accuser. But he's never given a proper name in any way. None of them are, except the Lord Jesus, who is the only begotten. He is before creation. He is part of the Godhead. Does God have other gods around him helping him rule? Yes, he does. Is that scary? Yes, I guess it is. But they're not part of the Godhead. But Jesus came as a man to walk this earth in complete obedience and lay his life down as the tamim, the perfect, sinless offering to reconcile human beings back to us. For what purpose? Look at this. Colossians 2:15, he disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them. Who are the rulers and authorities? They are the fallen ones, the sons of God. They are the principalities and powers that Paul speaks of in Ephesians 6. God shamed them through the work of Christ, not in a battle. He did it by love. He openly shamed them. Look at this, Zechariah 2:10. It says, sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for behold, I come and I dwell in your midst, declares the Lord, and many nations shall join themselves to the Lord in that day. Many nations. The Jews used to look at the other nations and just refer to them as sinful Gentiles. It was synonymous with being a Gentile, with being a sinner. But no more now, because that rulership under those corrupted sons of God has been broken. That means that God can reconcile even those people, the Gentiles, us. That's us. He can reconcile those back to him also. And remembering the promise to Abraham, look at this in Genesis 22:18, all the way back then, he said to them, and in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. What did Abraham do? What was Abraham's legendary act of obedience? Offered up his own son. What? Yes. What an amazing picture of God, what God would do in the future. Colossians 2:15, he says he disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them. I repeated that one, apologies. So the sons of God have been given legal right to rule the nations, but that power has been stripped off them. Do they still rule today? Yes, they do. But their days are numbered. and their power over people has been broken. That means the Lord can use his Holy Spirit to reach in and draw people out from under their grasp. Look at this, Ephesians 3:9, it says, and to bring to light for everyone what is the plan of the mystery hidden for ages or eons in God. It's all been hidden. Who created all things so that through the church, the manifold wisdom of God might now be known to the rulers and authorities in heavenly places. That's our destiny. The called out ones. This is a church. This is the gathering of believers. Those that have been called out of the world. The power of sin and chained to bondage has been broken, and we are made free through Christ, through the work of the Holy Spirit within us, to be free, to gather together, to be part of the ark, the church. A mystery that was hidden even from angels themselves. John 1:12 says, but as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. What an irony. What an amazing gift that God would elevate us to that position. Now when we read that we will rule and reign with him, does that not make sense now? That we will judge angels? What is he talking about? He's talking about the fallen sons of God. That we will be elevated to a position in God's counsel that we will even judge the fallen angels. And that's why Paul says, why are you bickering about stuff? Why are you worrying about who gets this and what gets that? He says that you're bringing the church into disrepute. Do you not know that you will judge angels? That is our destiny for followers of Christ in this life. The world tells you that you are nothing. It tells young people that they're nothing more than monkeys with no purpose in this life. And yet we are the pinnacle of this creation. He put man made in his image. We even look like him. What? He put us above what he had made, entire creation, before the sons of God. And they must have looked in awe and thought, who is this creation? Man and women. And we will be elevated to our true state. And that is, we're going to be immortal. We're not going to be playing a harp on a cloud. We're going to be ruling and reigning with Christ over and above who knows how many different species and worlds and galaxies that God is going to recreate in the new heaven and the new earth. That is a destiny worth being obedient to God for. There is so much more that he has got for us to do if we would just cling on in this life and be obedient to him and give up those things that we feel are important. He needs to break us of that so that he can fully use us. There is a hierarchy in heaven. And it's not that we want a gold chair in heaven, but isn't it annoying when you hear people say, well, I just want a pup tent in heaven. No, you don't want that. You really don't. You say that because there's still things in this life that you want to hang on to. And he's saying to you, look at this destiny that I have before you. You're going to be a son of God. You're going to be sitting in my counsel with the Most High, Yahweh, marveling at what Christ has done on the cross for us. In the most shameful act that he was spat on, whipped, flogged, and nailed to a tree to die. Like a dog. My goodness, what an amazing love story that God would seek after us to such a degree that he would put together this plan that had been hidden for ages. And that now, through the age of the church, we can grasp that. So when you read the Bible, try to see it in the most supernatural way that you can grasp at this time. And I will promise you that from here on, I will try to teach as much of the supernaturalism as I can, because it's so important for what's coming. for what's coming is that there will be great deception that's coming. Those that did the deceiving are coming again to deceive the nations once more. They want to drag, they know their destiny. They want to drag as many people with them into Sheol, into the grave, into hell. But we are destined for something so magnificent that we can't even grasp it. And I just pray that moving forward that we can really take on board and absorb the supernatural aspect of this library known as the Bible. Because there has been wild times on this planet and there's wild times to come. But we know we are in his grasp and we are under his wing. And there's nothing that can separate us from the love of Christ that he promises here. Let us pray.